Behind the wholesome family dinners and heartwarming goodnights lay a treasure trove of bizarre secrets that would shock even the most devoted fans. From actors with hidden gay lives to a house destroyed by an arsonist, from congressional hearings that saved the show to bootlegging sisters based on real moonshiners, the production was far stranger than fiction. The cast battled alcoholism, eating disorders, and strokes both on and off camera, while the sets burned down, were rebuilt, and secretly housed other famous TV families. These are the 15 weird facts about the Waltons, 1972 you never knew. Fact 1. Congressional TV quality hearings created the show. The Waltons might never have existed if it wasn't for politicians in Washington getting upset about what Americans were watching on television. In the early 1970s, Congress held special hearings to examine the moral quality of TV programming, and lawmakers were not happy with what they found. They complained that television shows were becoming too violent, too sexual, and lacked the wholesome family values that America needed. CBS network executives found themselves in a difficult position because of these congressional investigations. The government was essentially telling them to clean up their act and produce better, more family-friendly content. At the same time, the network had just gone through what television insiders called the rural purge in 1971, when CBS canceled almost every show that featured small-town or country themes. Popular programs like the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and Mayberry RFD were all axed, even though many of them were still drawing huge audiences and ranking in the top 10. When Earl Hamner Jr. pitched his idea for a Depression-era family drama based on his own childhood in rural Virginia, CBS was initially skeptical. The network had just gotten rid of all their rural programming, so why would they want another show about country folk? But the congressional pressure changed everything. Suddenly, CBS needed exactly the kind of wholesome, family-oriented programming that the Waltons represented. According to several sources close to answer to critics who said television lacked moral substance and positive family values. It was almost like CBS was saying to Congress, "See? We can make good, clean entertainment that brings families together." The irony is that the Waltons succeeded far beyond what anyone expected, proving that audiences actually did want the kind of programming that Congress was demanding. The show that was born out of political pressure became one of the most beloved family dramas in television history. Fact 2. Will Geer and Ellen Corby were both gay. The actors who played Grandpa and Grandma Walton and convinced millions of viewers they were a loving married couple were both gay in real life, living completely different lives away from the cameras. Will Geer, who portrayed the mischievous and wise Grandpa Zeb, and Ellen Corby, who played the feisty Grandma Esther, both hid their true sexual identities behind carefully constructed public facades during an era when being openly gay could destroy an acting career. Will Geer had been in a long-term relationship with Harry Hay, who was a prominent gay rights activist, but their relationship ended when Geer decided he wanted to have children. To achieve this goal and protect his career in Hollywood, Geer entered into a heterosexual marriage that gave him the family life he desired while allowing him to maintain his public image. His situation became even more complicated during the 1940s and 50s when he was blacklisted from Hollywood during the anti-communist witch hunts, partly because of his political beliefs and associations. Ellen Corby also lived a secret life that was completely different from her wholesome grandmother character. She had been in a long-term relationship with a woman, but like many gay actors of her generation, she kept this relationship completely private and maintained the appearance of being heterosexual in public. The pressure to hide her true identity was enormous, especially since she was playing such an iconic family figure that represented traditional American values. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is how natural and believable their on-screen chemistry was as a married couple. Both actors were so skilled at their craft that they could portray a loving, long-term marriage despite neither of them having that kind of relationship with someone of the opposite sex in real life. Their performances were so convincing that fans of the show were completely unaware of the complex personal lives hidden behind their beloved characters. The cast of the Waltons developed genuinely close relationships during the show's 9-year run, and both Gere and Corby became surrogate grandparents to the child actors, creating real family bonds that extended far beyond their fictional roles. Fact 3. Henry Fonda rejected the father role. One of Hollywood's most respected actors could have been the patriarch of the Walton family, but Henry Fonda turned down the role with a surprisingly insightful reason that showed he understood the show better than the network executives who wanted to hire him. When CBS was casting for the role of John Walton Sr., the family's hardworking father and moral center, they specifically approached Fonda because they wanted a big-name star to anchor the series and give it immediate credibility with audiences. Henry Fonda was already a legendary actor by the early 1970s, famous for his roles in classic films like The Grapes of Wrath, 12 Angry Men, and My Darling Clementine. He had the perfect combination of gravitas and warmth that seemed ideal for playing a Depression-era father trying to hold his large family together during difficult times. The network executives were convinced that having such a well-known and respected actor would guarantee the show's success and help it compete against other popular programs. According to Lee Rich, who was the showrunner behind The Waltons and several other successful television series, the meeting with Fonda didn't go as planned. Rich later recalled in an interview that they showed the pilot episode to Henry Fonda, hoping that he had immediately grasped something that the network executives had missed. The Waltons wasn't going to succeed because of one famous actor, but because of the ensemble cast and the authentic family relationships they portrayed together. This rejection turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it led to Ralph Waite being cast in the role, and Waite's more understated approach perfectly captured the humble, hard-working character that Earl Hamner Jr. had envisioned when he created the show based on his own father. Fact 4. Jason Walton was Christopher Robin's voice, the act characters in their classic animated films. John Walmsley, who portrayed Jason Walton throughout the show's entire 9-season run, was actually the voice of Christopher Robin in Disney's Winnie the Pooh cartoons, creating a strange connection between two of the most wholesome franchises in American entertainment. Walmsley began his voice acting career as a child, lending his young British accent to Christopher Robin in the 1968 Disney short film Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, which won an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. He continued voicing the character in The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh in 1977, which compiled several Pooh stories into one feature-length film that became a classic of Disney animation. The transition from voicing Christopher Robin to playing Jason Walton created an interesting parallel, since both characters represented idealized versions of childhood and family life, though in very different settings. Christopher Robin was the imaginative boy who brought stuffed animals to life in the 100-acre wood, while Jason Walton was the sensitive, music-loving teenager growing up during the Great Depression in rural Virginia. What makes this connection even more remarkable is that Walmsley was not just an actor but also a genuinely talented musician, which made him perfect for the role of Jason, who was often shown playing guitar, harmonica, and piano on the show. His musical abilities were real, and he went on to have a successful career as a professional musician after the Waltons ended, working with famous artists like Richard Marx, Brian Setzer, and Roger Daltrey. Walmsley was born in Blackburn, England, and moved to the United States as a child, which explains his natural British accent that made him perfect for voicing Christopher Robin. His journey from providing the voice of a boy who talked to stuffed animals to playing a Depression-era farm boy shows the unpredictable paths that young actors can take in the entertainment industry. Fact 5. The Baldwin sisters' recipe was real moonshine. The two prim and proper elderly sisters who offered their mysterious Papa's recipe to visitors on the Waltons were based on actual women that show creator Earl Hamner Jr. knew during his childhood in rural Virginia, and their famous recipe was indeed illegal moonshine whiskey that they produced and distributed throughout their community. Mary Jackson and Helen Klebe, who played Miss Emily and Miss Mamie Baldwin, brought to life characters that were directly inspired by real bootleggers who operated in Nelson County, Virginia, during the Great Depression era. Earl Hamner Jr. grew up knowing these two sisters who lived along Route 6 between Esmont and Scottsville in Virginia, and he often heard stories about their operation from his father and uncles who were regular customers. The real sisters made what they proudly called Papa's recipe, using the same euphemism that the fictional Baldwin sisters used on the television show to avoid directly acknowledging that they were manufacturing illegal alcohol. According to Hamner, the real sisters were extremely proud of their product and took great care in its production, treating it more like a family tradition than a criminal enterprise. They would anxiously watch visitors taste their recipe, asking questions like, "Was it smooth enough?" and "Had it been a good batch?" Because they genuinely cared about the quality of what they were making. The sisters used what they called Papa's machine, which was actually a moonshine still hidden on their property. The fictional version of these characters maintained the same innocent attitude toward their illegal activity, with Miss Emily and Miss Mamie treating their recipe like it was a harmless family tonic or medicinal remedy. Everyone in the community knew exactly what the Baldwin sisters were making, but they played along with the polite fiction because the sisters were so sweet and well-meaning. The actresses who portrayed these characters spent the rest of their careers being approached by fans who wanted to know the actual ingredients in the recipe. But Jackson and Klebe always refused to share any details, maintaining the mystery that made their characters so memorable and protecting the legacy of the real Virginia sisters who inspired them. Fact 6. The original house was destroyed by an arsonist. The beloved farmhouse that served as the Walton family home for 9 seasons met a shocking end when it was deliberately set on fire by an arsonist at Warner Brothers Studios, destroying one of television's most recognizable sets in a blaze that caused $200,000 in damage. On November 22, 1991, 10 years after the Waltons had ended its original run, the iconic white farmhouse with its distinctive front porch and 3 upstairs windows was reduced to ashes in what fire investigators determined was an intentional act of arson. Burbank fire officials discovered that the arsonist had splashed flammable substances around a chicken coop that was part of the Walton farm set, and also inside the house itself, creating burn patterns that clearly indicated the fire had been deliberately started. The flames spread rapidly from the chicken coop to the main house and then to the barn, consuming the entire farmhouse complex before studio firefighters could bring the blaze under control. What makes this crime even more disturbing is that some sources suggest the fire was set by the fire chief of the on-lot fire department at Warner Brothers, known as Engine 18, in what appeared to be a case similar to Munchausen syndrome, where someone creates emergencies so they can be the hero who responds to them. This means that the very person responsible for protecting the studio sets from fire may have been the one destroying them. The original Walton house had been built in an area of the Warner Brothers backlot known as the Jungle, which was designed to look like lush, tropical terrain and had been used for many different films and television shows since the 1950s. The farmhouse itself had previously been used for the television series Mayberry RFD, before being repainted white and modified to become the Walton family home. After the arson fire destroyed the original set, Warner Brothers was forced to build a completely new version of the Walton house on a different part of their lot for the reunion movies that were produced in the 1990s. This second version of the house would later be transformed and used as the Dragonfly Inn on the television series Gilmore Girls. Fact 7. The show killed off Flip Wilson's career. The unexpected popularity of the Waltons created one of television history's most dramatic rating battles, ultimately forcing comedian Flip Wilson to end his successful variety show after the Waltons completely destroyed his audience and knocked him out of the top 30 most-watched programs on television. The Flip Wilson Show had been a powerhouse for NBC, consistently ranking as the #2 show in America for 4 straight years, and making Wilson one of the biggest stars on television with his hilarious characters and celebrity guests. When CBS scheduled the Waltons for Thursday nights at 8 o'clock in 1972, they deliberately placed it in direct competition with The Flip Wilson Show on NBC and The Mod Squad on ABC, creating what television executives call a death slot where shows are expected to fail. The network executives at CBS were so convinced that the Waltons would not survive against such that time slot but they hoped the Waltons might be able to compete with the Mod Squad for second place. He said, "We thought the Waltons would be a good counter-program to Flip Wilson and Mod Squad. The basic appeal of those two shows is urban. We hoped the Waltons would have a big appeal in rural areas and small towns." However, the Waltons became an instant hit that completely surprised everyone in the television industry. Not only did it beat the Mod Squad, but it actually knocked the Flip Wilson show out of second place and sent Wilson's ratings plummeting so dramatically that his show fell completely out of the top 30 programs. Rather than watch his once dominant variety show continue to lose viewers week after week, Flip Wilson made the difficult decision to announce that Season 4 would be his final season, essentially ending his show while he could still do so with dignity. The success of the Waltons proved that audiences were hungry for the kind of wholesome family entertainment that Wilson's urban comedy couldn't provide. Fact 8. Ellen Corby's real stroke became the storyline. When Ellen Corby, the actress who played the feisty Grandma Esther Walton, suffered a devastating stroke in 1976, the show's writers made the extraordinary decision to incorporate her real medical condition into the storyline rather than replacing her or writing her character out of the series. The 66-year-old actress was found unconscious by her co-star Will Geer, who played her on-screen husband, Grandpa Walton, when she failed to show up for work one morning, which was completely out of character for the dedicated professional. Will Geer became genuinely concerned when Ellen didn't arrive at the studio because the cast had developed such close relationships during their years working together that they knew each other's habits and personalities extremely well. He decided to check on her and discovered that she had suffered a severe stroke that left her partially paralyzed and severely impaired her ability to speak clearly. Geer immediately rushed her to the hospital, and his quick action may have saved her life. Producer Earl Hamner Jr. faced a difficult decision about how to handle Ellen Corby's medical crisis. Since Grandma Walton was such an important character, and Ellen had won 3 Emmy Awards for her portrayal of the strong-willed family matriarch. Instead of recasting the role or killing off the character, Hamner chose to write Ellen's real stroke and recovery process directly into the show's storyline, creating one of the most emotionally powerful and realistic medical storylines ever seen on television, and created incredibly authentic scenes as the Walton family struggled to help her communicate and regain her independence. The storyline showed Grandpa, the grandchildren, and the rest of the family trying to help her speak, protect her, and assist her with daily tasks, while Grandma Walton fought to do things on her own and maintain her dignity and independence despite her physical limitations. Fact 9. The house facade was completely fake. The iconic 2-story farmhouse that millions of viewers believed was a real home where the Walton family lived was actually nothing more than an elaborate movie set facade, with only the front wall fully constructed, while the back was completely open and exposed like a dollhouse cut in half. Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen Walton throughout the series, revealed years later that fans would be shocked to discover how the famous house was actually built and how little of it was real when cameras weren't rolling. The front of the house that appeared in every opening and closing sequence of the Waltons was completely authentic looking, with its white wooden siding, front porch, 3 upstairs windows, and the distinctive architecture that made it feel like a genuine Depression-era farmhouse. However, behind that carefully constructed front wall was essentially an empty shell with no real interior rooms, no actual second floor, and no functional living spaces that matched what viewers saw on their television screens. What most people assumed was a complete 2-story house with John Boy's bedroom upstairs was actually just a facade, accessible only by a ladder that production crews used to reach the upper level for filming exterior shots of characters looking out the windows. The famous scenes of John Boy writing in his journal by his bedroom window, sound stages at Warner Brothers Studios, where complete interior sets had been built to match the style and layout of what the exterior facade suggested. The seamless way these exterior and interior shots were edited together created the illusion of one complete, functional family home. Fact 10. Ralph Waite was an ordained minister. The actor who portrayed John Walton Sr. the family patriarch, who was often shown skipping church services and expressing skepticism about organized religion, was actually a fully ordained Presbyterian minister in real life who had spent 3 years studying theology at Yale Divinity School before pursuing his acting career. Ralph Waite's character on the Waltons was deliberately written as someone who believed in God and held strong moral values but rarely attended formal church services, creating a fascinating contrast with the actor's own deep religious background and ministerial credentials. Before Ralph Waite ever stepped foot on a movie set or appeared on television, he had completed his education at Bucknell University and then enrolled at the prestigious Yale School of Divinity, where he spent 3 years studying to become a Presbyterian minister. After completing his theological education and becoming ordained, Waite actually worked as a minister and also took a job as a religious book editor for Harper & Row Publishing House, putting his ministerial training and acting career. But his religious background and life experience brought a depth and authenticity to his performances that younger actors might not have possessed. His theological training and understanding of moral and ethical issues helped him portray John Walton as a man of genuine principle and integrity, even though the character was written as someone who preferred to practice his faith through his daily actions rather than formal church attendance. The irony of this casting became even more apparent when Ralph Waite was asked to help fellow actor John Ritter, who played Reverend Matthew Fordwick on the Waltons, prepare for his role as the young minister who served the Walton family's community. Waite was able to provide Ritter with authentic insights into ministerial duties, religious practices, and the challenges of pastoral work because of his own real-world experience as an ordained clergyman, making their on-screen interactions even more believable and grounded in actual religious understanding. Fact 11. The set became Stars Hollow on Gilmore Girls. The house that served as the Walton family home got a complete makeover and became one of the most important locations in another beloved television series when it was transformed into the Dragonfly Inn on Gilmore Girls, creating an unexpected connection between two shows that featured close family relationships and small-town values. After the original Walton house was destroyed by arson in 1991, Warner Brothers built a replacement version on their Columbia Ranch lot specifically for the Waltons reunion movies that were produced throughout the 1990s. When the Waltons reunion projects ended, the rebuilt farmhouse sat unused on the Warner Brothers lot until the creators of Gilmore Girls discovered it and realized it would be perfect for their new show about a mother and daughter living in the fictional town of Stars Hollow, Connecticut. The production team made out beneath all the cosmetic changes, including the distinctive roofline and the 3 original upstairs windows that were part of the Walton house design. This transformation gave the house set a completely new life and allowed it to become the backdrop for another series about family bonds and community relationships, proving that some television sets are so well designed and versatile that they can successfully house multiple fictional families across different decades and dramatically different storylines. Fact 12. CBS scheduled it to fail against popular shows. CBS executives deliberately placed the Waltons in what television insiders call a death slot by scheduling it for Thursday nights at 8 o'clock against 2 of the most popular shows on television, fully expecting their new family drama to be quickly canceled and prove that audiences didn't want wholesome programming. The network positioned the Waltons directly opposite The Flip Wilson Show on NBC, which had been the #2 rated program in America for 4 consecutive years, and rural Virginia could compete in the modern television landscape of the early 1970s. According to Kami Kotler, who played the youngest Walton child Elizabeth, the rumor throughout the industry was that CBS put the Waltons against such strong competition because they didn't think it would survive and wanted to be able to tell Congress and critics that American audiences simply weren't interested in family-friendly programming. The network's lack of confidence in their own show was so obvious that industry insiders and even some of the cast members understood that CBS was essentially setting the Waltons up to fail. The Thursday 8 o'clock time slot was considered one of the most competitive and difficult spots on the entire television schedule, where even established hits could struggle to maintain their audiences against such popular competition. However, CBS did take one significant step to try to save their new show when they realized that the Waltons might actually have potential despite the impossible scheduling situation. The network purchased a full-page newspaper advertisement filled with positive reviews of the Waltons and urged viewers to give the show a chance, which was an unusual and expensive move for a program that they had initially expected to cancel quickly. This advertising campaign proved to be crucial because it helped the Waltons find its audience and achieve the dramatically increased ratings that not only saved the show, but completely transformed the television landscape by proving that wholesome family programming could indeed compete with urban comedy and crime dramas. Fact 13. Mary Mcdana developed an eating disorder. Mary Mcdana, who played Erin Walton, the second oldest daughter in the family, developed serious eating problems during her time on the Waltons because of the intense pressure she felt to maintain her appearance as the pretty one among the Walton children, leading to severe health complications that she tried to hide from her castmates and the production team. During an appearance on The Oprah Winfrey Show years later, Mcdana courageously revealed that the expectations placed on her to look thin and attractive on camera had driven her to adopt harmful eating habits that seriously damaged her physical health. The pressure to be the most attractive of the Walton daughters was particularly intense for Mcdana because her character Erin was often written as the one who was most concerned with her appearance, dating, and romantic relationships, which meant that she was frequently featured in scenes where her looks were a central focus of the storyline. This constant emphasis on her physical appearance, combined with the normal pressures that all young actresses face in Hollywood, created an environment where Mcdana felt that her value on the show depended entirely on maintaining a certain weight and look. The eating disorder that Mcdana developed became so severe that it began causing serious medical problems that she couldn't ignore, including the development of a painful ulcer and noticeable hair loss that made it increasingly difficult for her to maintain the healthy appearance that was expected of her character. Despite these alarming physical symptoms, Mcdana continued to try to hide her condition from the cast and crew because she was afraid that admitting to having eating problems might jeopardize her role on the show or disappoint the people who depended on her. The situation became so concerning that John Ritter, who played Reverend Matthew Fordwick and later became a guest character on the show, eventually noticed that something was seriously wrong and intervened to help Mcdana get the support she needed. Ritter's intervention was crucial because Mcdana had been struggling alone with her eating disorder and the physical complications it was causing, and she needed someone to recognize the severity of her situation and encourage her to seek proper medical attention and emotional support. Fact 14. A continuity error spans 40 years. The writers of The Waltons created one of television's most glaring timeline mistakes when they wrote the final reunion movie in 1997, accidentally contradicting the established history of John and Olivia Walton's marriage by several years and creating a mathematical impossibility that careful fans immediately noticed. In the reunion movie A Walton Easter, which was set in the fictional year 1969, John and Olivia are shown celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary, which would mean they were married in 1929, according to basic arithmetic. However, this anniversary date creates a major problem when compared to the timeline established in the very first episode of the original series, which aired in September of 1972. That pilot episode, titled The Foundling, was specifically set in 1933, and it clearly showed that John Boy was already 17 years old and had 6 younger brothers and sisters at that time. If John and Olivia had only been married in 1929, as the reunion movie suggests, then John Boy would have been born at the earliest in 1930, making him only 3 years old in 1933 instead of the 17-year-old character that Richard Thomas was portraying. This timeline error becomes even more complicated when you consider that the original series established that John Boy was the oldest of 7 children, which means that all of his siblings would have had to be born after 1930 if their parents weren't married until 1929. The mathematics simply don't work out, and it would have been impossible for John and Olivia to have had 7 children between 1930 and 1933. with the oldest being 17 years old. The mistake appears to have happened because the reunion movies were written and produced more than 15 years after the original series ended, and the writers apparently didn't carefully check the established timeline from the early episodes when they were creating the anniversary storyline. This kind of continuity error is particularly noticeable in a show like The Waltons, where family history and the passage of time were such important elements of the storytelling, and where fans had become very familiar with the ages and relationships of all the family members over the course of 9 seasons. Fact 15. The show used real fire for house-burning episode. The producers of The Waltons created one of the most intense and realistic episodes in the series by actually setting controlled fires inside the Walton house set for Season 4's The Burnout episode, putting the cast members in real danger as they performed their scenes surrounded by genuine flames and thick smoke. This dramatic episode, which aired in 1976, showed a devastating fire that destroyed much of the Walton family home while they were away, and the production team decided that the only way to make the destruction look completely authentic was to burn parts of the actual set. Ed Graves, who was the art designer for the Waltons, spent an entire month planning every detail of how to safely burn down portions of the house set while protecting the cast and crew from serious injury. According to Graves, the fire sequence required careful coordination between the show's special effects experts, the Warner Brothers Studio Fire Department, and the Burbank Fire Department to ensure that the controlled burns wouldn't get out of hand and cause real damage beyond what was planned for the episode. The production team created 2 separate fire scenarios to film the episode completely. One fire was set on the exterior house facade on the studio backlot, and another fire was carefully constructed on the interior house set that was built on a Warner Brothers soundstage. Almost everything that would be visible to the cameras was lined with asbestos for fire protection, except for the window frames, which could be easily and inexpensively replaced after being damaged by the flames. The cast members' reactions to the fire were completely genuine because they were actually responding to real smoke, real heat, and real flames as they rushed around trying to save their belongings and escape from the burning house. Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen, had her hair thoroughly wetted down before filming because the production team was concerned that her hair might actually catch fire from being so close to the real flames during the rescue scenes. Ed Graves personally walked through each area where fire jets were blazing to inspect the safety measures and minimize the dangers to everyone involved, but the risks were still significant enough that the fire scenes remain some of the most thrilling and authentic-looking disaster sequences ever filmed for a television series.